Episode of Mrs. Ross Does Math. Today's lesson is on adding and subtracting decimals, and it is lesson 6. Our essential question for today, which I would like you to please write down and is something you should be able to answer by the end of this lesson, is what is the major rule in adding and subtracting decimals? And the big thing that we need to be able to say is why. Why is that our major rule when we are adding and subtracting decimals? When we are adding and subtracting decimals, what I've done today is created a couple of short steps for you, and these are going to apply both when we are adding and subtracting. So there's no separation in our steps of what we need to do. Now, the first step that we have is that we need to line up our decimals vertically. Now, when I talk about lining up our decimals vertically or our numbers vertically, I talk about writing them up and down. And I'll explain more in just a moment. The reason why is because when we line up our decimals, we're able to make sure that we put the correct numbers in the right spots. And that, when we are adding and subtracting decimals, is critically important. The second step is that we are going to line up our numbers by their place value. So place value is going to be your ones, your tens, your hundreds, your thousands. And then it's also going to be your tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths. It's the TH. The THs are really small. The ones that end in an S are a lot bigger. And our third step in this that's going to be really helpful is we're going to go ahead and add some zeros if necessary. Now, those zeros are going to be some empty spaces where it might be beneficial for us to go ahead and put in a zero to help guide us through the process. Okay, so once again, our 3 steps are to first line up our decimals vertically. The second is to line up our numbers based upon their place value. And our third step is that we are going to go ahead and add zeros if necessary. Go ahead and pause this at this point if you need to, because I'm going to go ahead and scroll these notes on up. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is to please make a 2-column chart or a T-chart. On one side of your T-chart is going to say adding. The other side of your T-chart or 2-column chart is going to say subtracting. And what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the adding side first. So if we have this problem, 2.08 plus 0.04 plus 1.3, we are going to go ahead and use our 3 steps listed above to help guide us through this process. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to line up all of our decimals vertically. And like I was saying earlier, this is where I'm going to list my numbers instead of writing them horizontally like I am here. I'm going to line them up vertically, meaning up and down. That's going to be a lot easier for me to go ahead and find my answer that way. So I'm going to rewrite this as 12.08. I'm also going to line up my numbers by their place value. So here, my next one says 0.04. So I'm going to put the 0, my decimal, and then the 0.4 right there. And then for my third one, it's 1.3. So I'm going to go 1.3. My decimals are all in a nice straight line, so they are not going to change. Now I'm going to put a line underneath this and a plus sign out in front. Now what I have here is some empty space. Now I have an empty space right next to the 3, so I'm going to put a 0 right here. I also have an empty space underneath the 1 in our tens column, so I'm going to put a 0 here and a 0 here. Those zeros just make sure that we don't combine any numbers that shouldn't be combined together. So now, I'm going to go ahead and add. So I'm going to go 8 plus 4 plus 0. That's going to give me 12, so I bring down the 2, carry my 1. I'm now going to go 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 3, which is going to give me 4. My decimal stays in the exact same spot, that it was in. And now I'm going to go 2 plus 0 plus 1, which gives us 3, and 1 plus 0 plus 0, which gives us 1. So our final answer, or the answer to a addition problem, which is called the sum, is going to be 13.42. And I'm going to circle it. Now I'm going to use that same exact process when I'm subtracting, and it's really important when we are subtracting that we make sure that we have everything lined up correctly. So when I'm taking a look at subtracting, I've got the problem of 23.5 minus 1.25. So once again, I'm going to take my 23.5 and I'm going to write subtract, and then I'm going to put my 1.25. Now my decimal would go here, so I'm going to go 1, 2, and 5. I have to keep everything in that same spot. So now I'm going to go ahead, draw my line underneath. I'm going to place some zeros because here, right next to my 0.5 up top, there's an empty spot. So I'm going to put a 0 there, and I'm going to put a 0 underneath my 2. Really having those zeros is a lot more important when we are subtracting than it is when we're adding, but it's still a good process to get through, okay? So now we're going to go 0 minus 5. We can't go 0 minus 5. So we're going to cross out the 5 next to our 0 on top, making it a 4, and we're going to borrow a group of 10 over on the 0 right here. Now I have 10, because I added a 1 to it to make it 10. So 10 minus 5, which is going to give me 5. I'm going to go 4 minus 2 instead of 5 minus 2, which is going to give me 2. I'm going to put my decimal. And now I'm also going to go 3 minus 1, which is 2, and 2 minus 0, which is 2. So I get the answer of 22.25. Now the difference here, which is the answer to a subtraction problem, would be 22.25, and that would be our final answer. What I would highly recommend is if you need some extra assistance on borrowing numbers, is I would take a look at a couple of example problems that you can find online. I'll also put a couple of example problems extra in our assignment before we get things going for today to really give you the opportunity to go ahead and really hone in on that skill and bring it back once again from your long-term memory to your working or short-term memory, okay? Now at the very bottom, we are going to go ahead and answer our why. Now down here, our question was, what is the major rule in adding and subtracting decimals and why? What I want you to do down here in your reflection and summary is tell me what is the major rule and why it is important. So what do you think our major rule is when we add or subtract decimals, and why is it important? If you have any questions, as always, please reach out and let me know. Thank you so very much for watching. This has been Mrs. Ross Does Math. I'll see you shortly.